What's up, guys? So I want to briefly preface this session of Blade Symphony with a history of my experience with competitive tennis. I played for my high school team, and I also played in the USTA circuit from elementary school through high school, USTA being United States Tennis Association. I was ranked as high as number 2 in the state in singles, and as high as number 1 in the state in doubles. I also qualified for Southerns multiple years, and a couple years after high school, I got a job working at Saddlebrook Golf and Tennis Resort / Academy as an instructor. Saddlebrook is one of the more prestigious resorts / academies we have for those sports here in the US. And the reason why I became the caliber of player that I did was because I constantly was seeking the best competition. Opponents that were, at the time, far superior to myself. And it did wonders for my learning process. The reason why I mention all of this is because I wanted to emphasize that I fully understand the importance of going up against superior competition, and it specifically relates to this video because I asked a certain Blade Symphony player who I'm familiar with if he would be up for kicking me around for a while, and he was. So I got an opportunity to learn something from a player that is much better than myself. So for this session, I'm going to analyze some of the fights, talk about some of the things that I picked up on, and some of the things that I learned overall through these fights. Now this is the guy that I got to kick me around. His name's Syndraulic. Nice guy, phenomenal player, and the first thing that I really picked up on right away was that his movement is above and beyond what I'm capable of doing. Now, I've fought against quite a few Blade Symphony players. Now, I don't have a lot of experience in the game, but I have fought against quite a few masters in Blade Symphony, and I've definitely seen some guys that can flat out move and know how to cover ground. There's a perfect example of that right there. Now, you'll notice that I do shuffle jumps of my own. What he just did to me was a shuffle jump attack. I do shuffle jump, but I cannot shuffle jump like that. He kind of came in at an angle, like at a diagonal angle, and I really did not see that coming. It's not something that I see that often, and he really incorporates a lot of those attacks in his gameplay. So that was one of the first things that I picked up on, and that's definitely something that I need to practice. I love being able to close the gap quickly, and in fact, you'll probably notice me doing that in my own way from time to time. I generally like to go into a charge dash, into an air side, but these diagonal shuffle jumps are quick as lightning, really. I slowed that down to something like 30%. So when it's at 100%, which you'll see throughout the video, he hits me with a lot of those. It's almost impossible to react to it. I mean, you really need to envision it coming ahead of time in order to counter that kind of stuff, or you need to keep yourself spaced at a certain distance so you know that you're out of range of those attacks. Really tricky stuff. Now, the second thing that I picked up on quite early was that my arsenal of attacks, the variety of combos I was throwing out, was paltry compared to Syndraulic's. So I started to try to incorporate more fake outs. I tried to balance myself a little bit better between aggression and defense because, because of my severe lack of variety in attacks, and on top of my inferior movement skills compared to his, when I'm trying to go toe to toe and out aggress Centralic, it's not working out at all for me. So I really started trying to bait him in to some parries a little bit more frequently, and I had some success with it initially, but I learned very quickly that I have to be careful just how often I show my cards like that. I was able to fake him out a few times with the shurikens, but after I did it a few too many times, he started honing in on it, and I started getting punished severely after a certain point. So, I quickly learned that I need to reel it back in with the shuriken fake outs, because it can leave you exposed, and you don't want to do the same thing too much on top of that, because it just allows your opponent to get into a rhythm, and you don't want to become one-dimensional. One-dimensional in Blade Symphony really doesn't work out for me against masters. They have a keen observational sense, and they can really start picking you apart if you start spamming the same attack too much, staying in the same stance too often, and that goes for leaving yourself exposed with shurikens and stuff like that too. So you really need to pick and choose the moments that you do those things. Now, one of the things that Syndraulic told me early on, he was like, hey man, you might want to use more sides, because you're really not using that many. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I really don't use side attacks in this game. Now, I do like to use the heavy side left. There's an example of me using this balanced side. I think that was actually after he mentioned my lack of side attacks. But yeah, I generally like the heavy left side attack, because it comes out fast and it has a relatively fast recovery. And that's the thing with side attacks that makes me nervous, is because they generally have a long lock time. So if you're not going into a side and fainting out of it, then you're definitely going to leave yourself exposed, unless it's just perfectly timed. There's a good chance that an experienced player will just back up and wait for you to be in your lock time animation during the side, and then just punish you before you get out of your lock time. So that's why I'm always nervous to throw out sides. And I try, on top of that, I try not to feint too much either, unless I'm trying to bait someone in, or unless I'm trying to bail myself out and I sense danger basically, and I need to feint out of a charge and get the hell out of there before I feel the pain. So that was a really interesting and important lesson that I learned, was that I need to be a little bit more aggressive with side attacks. I need to not be afraid of throwing them out, because Syndraulic caught me with quite a few side attacks, and the timing that you feint out of those is also very important, because I would see that he would go for one of those balanced sides, and I would kind of step back and wait to punish him, but then all of a sudden he just kind of feints out of it, and he's in my face, hitting me. So it's definitely a useful trick. It's very deceptive, assuming that you can get the timing down for the feints. Now, if you try to feint out of those animations too late, then you're going to end up in a lock time. And that's where my lack of experience really kicks in, because I don't really know the best times to feint out of those side attacks just yet. Now, another thing that was really hurting me early on was whenever we do Clash Blades, whenever we do lock into a parry and it's neutral, he was winning the retaliation more often than not. And what I mean by that is whenever you're both clash blades in the same stance, it'll result in, a neutral parry where neither opponent wins. And basically, a lot of opponents, especially masters that I faced, are very adept at grabbing you after a parry like that. They'll just grab you, and you have to be ready to counter grab, or they're gonna grab you, slit your throat, and push you to the ground. At which point, once you're on the ground, you're, at least me, I have a hard time getting out of the next attack because, I'll try to roll backwards, I'll try to roll to the side to get the hell out, but experienced players are very good at keeping the pressure on once they knock you down. They'll dash up in your face and start hitting you with fasts. That opponent that I fought at the beginning of the video shuffle jumped over my head and then grabbed me from the back, and then did it again and almost did it a third time. Thank God he didn't get me the third time there. Yeah, it's advanced tactics like that that I really don't know much about, and I definitely don't execute those types of tactics myself. So playing against superior competition really enlightens me, when it comes to picking up on tips and tricks like that. Now, one of the main things about playing against superior competition in sports or video games is that it gives you, as the inferior player, a chance to rise to the occasion, to try to figure out ways to fight back and to make it a challenge at the bare minimum for your opponent. And throughout this session, I did find myself having some moments of brilliance, and that's kind of how it is, like with me in fighting games in general, even ones that I'm really not that experienced in. I kind of find these moments where it clicks for a little while, but then it's gone, and I only retain so much of what I just did because I'm so caught up in the moment. And it's kind of stuff like that, where I'm just in the heat of the moment, and I'm able to move forwards, move backwards, correctly judge the distance between myself and my opponent, and release my charge attack at just the right time. So where I'm covering quite a bit of ground with it, and the chances are pretty good that it's going to be a parry in my favor, or I'm going to catch my opponent off guard and hit them before they can even really know what's coming. And on top of that, one of the ways that I felt myself excelling was I was a little bit more cognizant of where I was in my attack string. Now for Judge, for this character that I'm playing, you have 3 attacks that you can do in a string before the string resets, or unless you reset it yourself. So it's easier for me, especially as a pretty much a noob compared to many people in this game, is the Judge is a little bit easier to keep track of where you're at in your attack string, because you only have three parts of the string. But even so, it's really easy for me. Oh yeah, and this was probably one of the best fake outs I had, where I anticipated him. What I thought was going to happen there was I thought he was going to come at me with one of those diagonal shuffle jumps again. So I went into a heavy right, per his suggestion that I throw out more side attacks. So I went with a heavy right, which is kind of unique because you can do it on the run. It's got kind of a slow wind up, but you can reposition yourself as you're swinging. So I kind of backed up and away from him while swinging in the direction that I thought that he was going to go in, and it ended up just being a perfect read on my end. But I had very few I had very few reads like that, but it was moments like that where I felt myself learning. I felt like I was picking up on things, like the importance of knowing where you're at in the string and having the vision to plan ahead. So yeah, that was a big moment for me there. It was a pretty big confidence boost. Now that being said, I included most of the fights between myself and Syndra. Like, I think I maybe cut 3 or 4 of them. Some of the less interesting ones, I wanted to show, how he was a far superior player to me as much as I could. So I tried to include as many of the, just the pure beatdowns as possible. But there were a few that were just like, oh my, like no one wants to watch that because they were so bad. But they're clips that I'm gonna hang on to as reminders of like, dude, please, don't be a moron anymore. Like, don't run in, with a fast attack when you know that your opponent is charging up a balanced and coming right at you. Just not very smart tactics. So I really wanted to include myself getting outplayed more than just me being an idiot, because there's plenty of me being an idiot in here, like, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's a little bit of saving face, it's a little bit of, it's just kind of boring to watch, you know what I mean? But yeah, this was a fantastic session of fights. I really need to do this more often. Hopefully Sin will be up for kicking me around a little bit more. I thought this was a really good matchup. Now, myself, I pretty much only use Judge, and I pretty much only use Katana. I have very minor experiences playing with anything other than this setup. Whereas Sin, I've seen him playing, a bunch of different setups, so he's very multi-dimensional. So maybe I can get him to hit me up with a different combination, of weapons and characters to kind of better demonstrate the variety of attacks and strategy involved in the game. Myself, I'll probably stick to this because, frankly, I don't play very much. But that doesn't mean that when I do play, I'm not trying, because, I want to win. Now, I'm not, like, hell-bent on winning or anything like that. I can take my losses like a man, you know what I'm saying? In fact, in some cases, I almost prefer to lose, like in this session right here. I fully expected to get my ass whipped. Fully expected it, and it was a pleasure, to have it happen. But at the same time, I'm trying to win. I'm not just completely nonchalant whenever I get flawless in a round like that. I was getting frustrated a few times. Not to the point where I was getting angry, but to the point where I was like, okay, it's time for me to step it up. And, I was giving myself the proper motivation, to kind of persevere. So, I don't want to, brush off losses like, oh, it's whatever, I'm inexperienced. No, screw that, man. I'm trying to win here. Thanks, Sin, again, for humoring me with all these fights, because, I know that, even though I was able to fight back a few times, like, overall, it was just, me getting outplayed left and right, especially on the movement side of things. You can just kind of see, like, how well he moves around, and even though I can catch him from time to time, more often than not, he's getting behind me or he's getting beside me before I can really react. So, if I was to take away any one thing, from this fight, from this set of fights, it would be the difference in movement between us. Like to me, that was the most drastic difference, was just the way Sin is able to move around and reposition himself, get himself out of harm's way, but primarily how he was able to apply the superior movement for offense, you know, because like that's something that I'm really interested in. You know, I kind of felt like I did plenty of running away in this set of matches because, you know, I kind of realized early on that, you know, I was being out-aggressed and that, you know, I really needed to just better balance myself. So, you know, the one thing that I'm definitely going to take away from this set of fights is the movement abilities. And that's the next thing that I'm really going to be working on once I log into Blade Symphony again. I'm going to try to make the movement work out for me a little bit better on the offensive side of things. Now, one thing that we kind of briefly talked about was, you know, in regards to balancing aggression and defense was that it's much easier to get into defensive mode using the katana, you know, because of the feint, because of its special ability. You know, because being aggressive with the katana, because you don't have a block mechanic, it's much more likely that you're going to get clipped with an attack. So, you know, you really got to know what you're doing when it comes to being aggressive with this weapon, being consistently aggressive with it. So, yeah, that's, you know, once again, Sen, thank you for the fights, man. I really appreciate it. I think I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to for this video, so I'm going to leave it here. I hope you guys enjoyed the fights, and I'll see you on the next one.